Julian Blake, a wealthy property mogul in his late 50s, prided himself on his vast collection of high-end properties scattered across the city's most desirable neighborhoods. With a strict quality control mindset, he personally reviewed every rental application for his flagship apartments, scrutinizing even the smallest details. He believed his success stemmed from maintaining his building's exclusivity by filtering out tenants who didn't fit. To Julian, a stable and uniform environment equated to a valuable property, a philosophy he never questioned. One evening, as Julian was poring over applications, a particular submission caught his eye. The Williams family, a married couple in their early 30s, Aaron and Natalie with 2 young daughters. Their application seemed flawless. High credit scores, stable incomes, glowing references from previous landlords. Yet, upon seeing their photo, Julian's brow creased. The family was black. His initial thought, shaped by years of unconscious bias, was to reject them outright. "It just wouldn't work," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. With a sigh, he moved their application to the reject pile, justifying his choice by thinking it would keep the atmosphere of the building intact. Little did Julian know, his decision would set off a series of events that would challenge his beliefs and shake him to his core. Across town, his own daughter, Emily, who had recently started working at a nonprofit community center, was forming an unexpected connection with Aaron Williams, the very man Julian had dismissed. Emily admired Aaron's commitment to his family and his quiet yet impactful role in their community, unaware of her father's decision to deny them a home. As Julian continued on with his life, a series of encounters between Emily and the Williams family began to unravel the very foundation of his beliefs. Emily's enthusiasm about her work and her new friends started to bridge a gap between her and her father, bringing him a surprising awareness of the goodness in the family he had so easily overlooked. Through her eyes, Julian would slowly come to realize the depths of his own biases and the real value of compassion and community over his cherished notion of exclusivity. While Julian remained blissfully unaware of the unfolding connection between Emily and the Williams family, Emily's admiration for Aaron and Natalie Williams grew stronger with each passing day. The community center where she volunteered was a small but bustling place where families from all backgrounds came together, united by a shared goal of building a better future for their children. Emily, just 24 and fresh out of college, felt she had finally found her purpose here. Helping families, planning events, and fostering a spirit of unity brought her a sense of fulfillment she hadn't known before. One afternoon, as they organized a workshop for parents and children, Emily noticed Aaron helping a young boy who was struggling with a math problem. Aaron's patience and encouragement reminded her of her own father in a strange way, supportive, firm, and dedicated to guiding others. Watching Aaron work with the children, Emily felt a tug of respect she hadn't anticipated. The Williams family seemed to possess a warmth and kindness that went beyond words. It was in their actions, their support for their community, and the way they interacted with everyone around them. Curious, Emily began to learn more about Aaron and Natalie's background. She discovered that despite the challenges they had faced, they had built a small but successful consulting business, worked hard to provide for their daughters, and dedicated their free time to helping others. Aaron had been raised in a neighborhood where resources were scarce, but he had strived to overcome those odds, instilling resilience and empathy in his own children. Emily found herself inspired by their story, feeling a strange mix of admiration and guilt. How could anyone see this family as anything other than an asset to their community? Meanwhile, at Julian's office, he remained steadfast in his views, convinced that he was doing the right thing. Over the years, Julian's world had become increasingly insulated, confined to business meetings, high-profile social events, and a circle of like-minded friends who rarely questioned each other's beliefs. He often reminded himself that maintaining standards wasn't just good business. It was the foundation of his success. Yet, in quiet moments, He couldn't shake the subtle discomfort that nagged at him whenever he thought back to the Williams application. He buried this feeling deep, convinced it was simply an overreaction. But that feeling resurfaced when he received a message from Emily, inviting him to an upcoming event at the community center. "It's going to be great, Dad. You'll get to see what I've been working on," she texted, her enthusiasm practically leaping off the screen. Julian hesitated. He rarely ventured into neighborhoods outside his familiar polished enclaves. Yet something in Emily's message, an earnestness he hadn't seen in her before, compelled him to say yes. As Julian reluctantly marked the event on his calendar, Emily looked forward to introducing her father to the Williams family, hoping he'd see what she saw in them. Julian had no idea this visit would lead him face to face with the very people he had once dismissed, and that Emily's admiration for Aaron and Natalie would slowly unravel the prejudices Julian held so tightly. The day of the community event arrived with an unusual sense of anticipation for Julian. Dressed in his usual tailored suit, he looked every bit the part of a successful businessman, yet his confidence felt slightly shaken. The venue, a modest but vibrant community center bustling with families, was far removed from the sleek corporate offices and high-end restaurants he frequented. Julian scanned the room, his gaze settling on groups of parents chatting, children playing, and volunteers moving around, their energy infectious. For the first time, he found himself curious about this world his daughters seemed so captivated by. Emily waved him over enthusiastically, introducing him to colleagues and families with an ease that surprised him. Her excitement was palpable as she guided him through the center, explaining how each program brought the community closer. Suddenly, she stopped, her face lighting up as she turned toward a couple in the distance, Aaron and Natalie Williams. With their 2 young daughters by their side, they looked genuinely happy, their warmth radiating as they greeted others. "Dad, I want you to meet the Williams family," Emily said, smiling brightly. "They've been such an inspiration to me." As they approached, Julian felt a strange sense of déjà vu. The couple looked familiar, but he couldn't quite place them until Aaron extended his hand. Julian's mind raced. Aaron Williams. The name triggered his memory, and he realized, with a pang of discomfort, that this was the family he had rejected as tenants. His face froze in a polite smile, masking the whirlwind of thoughts churning inside him. "Mr. Blake, it's a pleasure to meet you," Aaron said, his handshake firm and genuine. Natalie smiled warmly, introducing their daughters with pride. Julian struggled to find his voice, nodding stiffly as he exchanged greetings. Emily, oblivious to her father's inner turmoil, continued enthusiastically. "Dad, you wouldn't believe the impact the Williams family has on the community. Aaron organizes tutoring sessions for kids, and Natalie runs a small reading program. They do so much to help others, even while managing their business and raising 2 little ones." For a moment, Julian felt trapped. Here stood the family he had dismissed as unsuitable tenants, a family that had, in reality, exceeded every standard of character and contribution he claimed to value. Seeing them interact with Emily, so full of respect and admiration, began to stir something unexpected in him. Doubt. He wondered, could he have misjudged them so severely? As the evening progressed, Julian found himself observing the Williams family more closely. Aaron helped set up chairs, engaged easily with parents, and even managed to keep his young daughters entertained. Natalie's gentle presence made the children around her feel at ease, and her laughter was a constant melody in the background. Watching them, Julian was struck by how seamlessly they seemed to bring warmth and unity to those around them. It became increasingly clear to Julian that this was not just a suitable family. They embodied values he had claimed to uphold: integrity, kindness, hard work. Yet he had denied them a place in his world based solely on unfounded fears and assumptions. The realization weighed heavily on him. Julian felt his carefully constructed beliefs start to crumble, the certainty he once held giving way to a painful awareness of his own prejudice. By the end of the night, Julian knew he couldn't ignore what was unfolding within him. The Williams family had unknowingly revealed to him a truth he had long buried. His commitment to exclusivity had cost him genuine connection, the very essence of community he claimed to protect. As he drove home, Julian replayed the evening's events in his mind, feeling the sting of shame rise within him. The faces of Aaron, Natalie, and their daughters haunted him, their kindness standing in stark contrast to the dismissiveness he had shown them. And for the first time, Julian questioned not just his judgment, but the values he had built his life upon. The days following the community event left Julian unsettled. Every time he glanced at the framed photos of his properties in his office, a wave of discomfort washed over him. The sense of pride he once felt now seemed hollow, replaced by an unfamiliar guilt he couldn't shake. He was haunted by the memory of Aaron's warm handshake and Natalie's kind smile, contrasting sharply with the cold, detached decision he had made to reject their application. For the first time in years, Julian felt an urge to confront his own biases, a task he had long avoided. At home, he was unusually quiet, which didn't go unnoticed by Emily. Sensing something was off, she decided to approach him one evening after dinner. "Dad, are you okay? You seemed a bit distant at the event," she said gently, her eyes filled with concern. Julian hesitated, feeling the weight of his own shame grow heavier. Emily had no idea of the internal conflict that had been brewing within him since meeting the Williams family. Taking a deep breath, Julian decided to confide in her, his voice faltering. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you. That family, the Williams, they applied to rent one of my properties recently. I turned them down." Emily's expression shifted from curiosity to surprise, and then disappointment. "You turned them down? But why, Dad? They're perfect tenants. You saw them. They're kind, hardworking, and involved in the community. I don't understand." Julian looked down, unable to meet her gaze. I thought it was for the best. I didn't want to disrupt the atmosphere of the building. I convinced myself that it was better this way. But now, after seeing them with you and the impact they have on the community, I realize I was wrong." His voice broke slightly, a rare display of vulnerability that took Emily by surprise. Emily's disappointment was palpable. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before responding. "Dad, do you understand the impact of that decision? Families like the Williams don't just bring stability, they enrich the community. They give back, they inspire others, and they create a sense of belonging that can't be bought or manufactured." Her words hit Julian like a hammer, each one resonating with a truth he could no longer deny. "I thought I was protecting my properties, but I was really just protecting my own narrow view of the world," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Meeting them, seeing how they live, I realize now that I've let my prejudices shape my decisions. It's painful, Emily. I didn't think I was that kind of person." Emily reached out, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "The fact that you can admit that now is a step forward, Dad. It's never easy to confront these things, but it's not too late to make it right." Her voice was steady but encouraging, and Julian felt a glimmer of hope stir within him. The next morning, Julian sat in his office staring at the phone, a sense of purpose rising within him. He knew what he had to do. Picking up the phone, he dialed Aaron's number, his heart pounding as he waited for the line to connect. When Aaron answered, Julian's voice was steady but laced with remorse. "Aaron, this is Julian Blake. I owe you and your family an apology. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, in rejecting your application. If you're still interested, I would be honored to welcome you into one of my properties. And if not, I completely understand. I just want you to know that I regret my decision deeply." There was a pause on the other end, and Julian held his breath, bracing for a response. After a moment, Aaron spoke, his tone calm, yet firm. "Mr. Blake, thank you for calling. I appreciate your apology, truly. It takes courage to own up to a mistake like this. We've since found another place to call home, but I accept your apology." Julian felt both relief and regret, a bittersweet acknowledgement that, while he couldn't undo the harm he had done, he could begin to change. "Thank you, Aaron," he replied softly, a weight lifting slightly from his shoulders. "And if there's anything I can do to support you or your family, please don't hesitate to let me know." After the call ended, Julian sat in silence, feeling a sense of clarity he hadn't experienced in years. The experience had shaken him to the core, but it had also ignited a desire to right his wrongs, to become the kind of person who saw value in people, not just in property. For Julian, this was only the beginning of a journey toward understanding, compassion, and, most importantly, a genuine sense of community. After the conversation with Aaron, Julian felt a powerful urge to go beyond words and take action. The realization that he had lost the opportunity to welcome a family like the Williams into his property stung deeply, but it also fueled his determination to do better. In the days that followed, he began to look at his business practices with fresh eyes. For the first time, he questioned the policies he had created to preserve exclusivity. He wondered how many other deserving families he might have turned away simply because they didn't fit his narrow vision. Julian spent hours going over past applications, finding traces of his own biases in decisions he had made over the years. He was startled by the subtle but pervasive patterns he had unconsciously enforced, patterns that had excluded so many. Each application told a story, a family with dreams, aspirations, and the desire for a place to call home. Realizing this, Julian knew he couldn't continue with business as usual. The time had come to change not only his mindset, but also the structure of his business. With renewed resolve, Julian reached out to his team, sharing his vision for a more inclusive approach. His managers, accustomed to his strict policies, were taken aback by his sudden shift. Some questioned whether this new direction was wise, fearing it might hurt their brand's exclusive reputation. But Julian was unwavering, explaining that exclusivity without compassion had only led him down a path of emptiness and regret. His voice was steady and his conviction clear. He wanted his properties to become spaces where diversity was not just tolerated, but welcomed. To take concrete action, Julian decided to partner with local community organizations, including the center where Emily volunteered. His goal was to create a program that supported families who might traditionally face barriers to finding housing, helping them secure stable homes within his properties. He wanted his business to contribute to the community rather than isolate itself from it. He reached out to community leaders and social workers to understand the real challenges families like the Williams faced, hoping his properties could be part of a larger solution rather than a source of exclusion. As he became more involved, Julian found himself attending more community events, joining efforts to support families in need, and even speaking at gatherings about the importance of inclusivity. Over time, he was surprised by how fulfilling this work felt, bringing him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. The polished world of high-end business deals and cocktail parties faded into the background, replaced by genuine connections with people from all walks of life. One evening, at a community center event, he noticed Aaron and Natalie Williams in the crowd, speaking with other families. Though he knew they had already moved on, Julian felt compelled to approach them once more, not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. When he reached them, he offered a sincere thank you for the way their family had changed his life. Aaron looked at him thoughtfully, and after a moment, he nodded. "Mr. Blake, people make mistakes. What matters is what we do after we realize them. I respect that you've taken steps to change." Natalie smiled, adding, "And the community appreciates it. It's not every day someone in your position is willing to do the hard work of looking inward." For Julian, their words were more valuable than any business success he had achieved. In their acceptance, he found a sense of healing. It was not a complete absolution, but it was a step toward redemption. He left the event feeling a sense of peace, knowing he was finally becoming the person he had always aspired to be, a man who saw value in people beyond their appearances or backgrounds. As Julian continued to embrace his new role in the community, He noticed a profound shift in his relationship with Emily. She was proud of him, seeing the changes he was making, and their bond grew stronger. Julian realized that this journey was not only about righting his wrongs, but also about creating a legacy of empathy and compassion for his daughter to inherit. For the first time, he felt he was living a life that could truly make a difference. Months passed, and Julian's transformation became evident not just to his family, but to the entire community. He had redefined his properties as welcoming spaces, open to people from diverse backgrounds. The exclusive, rigid policies that once defined his business were replaced with guidelines that prioritized respect, inclusivity, and community values. Julian had found a new rhythm in his life, one that revolved around relationships rather than revenue, around empathy rather than exclusivity. One afternoon, Emily invited him to a gathering at the community center, this time to celebrate a new initiative her team had been working on, a scholarship program for underprivileged youth. Julian had helped fund the project, and although he had contributed financially, he felt that his presence and support for the cause held even more meaning. Arriving at the event, he saw familiar faces and exchanged warm greetings. No longer the detached businessman, but a welcome friend. As Julian mingled, he noticed Aaron and Natalie across the room, speaking to a group of parents with their daughters by their side. A wave of gratitude washed over him. He felt fortunate to have encountered this family, whose values of compassion and integrity had shown him a different path. Overcoming his initial hesitation, he approached them, feeling a genuine bond he had never thought possible. Aaron extended a warm handshake, and Natalie greeted him with a friendly smile. They exchanged stories about their families, their plans, and the new community projects they were working on. For the first time, Julian saw in them not just tenants he had once rejected, but true friends who had changed the trajectory of his life. As the event drew to a close, the community gathered for a group photo. Standing among families from all walks of life, Julian felt a profound sense of belonging. The person he had been, one who prioritized status and exclusivity, felt like a distant memory. In his place was a man who had found purpose in contributing to a shared vision of unity and support. Later that evening, Julian sat on his porch, reflecting on the journey he had taken. Emily joined him, sensing the weight of his thoughts. "You've come a long way, Dad," she said softly, her voice full of pride. Julian smiled, realizing just how deeply his daughter's influence had guided him toward this new life. "You know, Em, I never thought I'd feel this way," he admitted. "For so long, I measured success by numbers and prestige. But now, seeing the impact of genuine connections and shared values, it feels like I'm finally building something that will last." Emily nodded, her eyes shining. "You're leaving a legacy, Dad. Not just buildings or properties, but values that will live on in the community. That's worth so much more." Julian reached for her hand, feeling a warmth and gratitude he couldn't put into words. His journey had been long, filled with difficult realizations and uncomfortable truths, but it had led him to a place of purpose and fulfillment. Looking out at the sunset, he knew he had finally found his true calling, not as a businessman focused solely on success, but as a community member committed to lifting others. In the following years, Julian continued his work, now devoted to expanding housing opportunities and supporting community initiatives. The name Blake Properties began to carry a new reputation, not of exclusivity, but of inclusivity and compassion. Families like the Williams were at the heart of this transformation, their stories now interwoven with his legacy. As Julian's life moved forward, he cherished the friendships he had made and the wisdom he had gained. He knew he could never fully repay the Williams family for the lessons they had taught him, but he vowed to honor their impact by championing a community where everyone was valued. And with each new project, each partnership, Julian Blake had found a true purpose, building not just properties, but a legacy of kindness that would live on for generations. This final segment closes Julian's journey, showing his ultimate redemption and commitment to a life of compassion and inclusivity, leaving a lasting legacy. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to adjust or if there's more I can help with.